Wow. As fellow entrepreneurs, we are driving hard, really wanting to accelerate our success to make that difference in the world. We're big believers in capitalism. We create tremendous value for others, and we do well by doing well. I mean, this is a great life, except, there's always that but. And one of the big buts is that there is a lot of liability out there. And almost everyone, nobody gets through life unscarred. If you haven't been sued, you haven't been in litigation, you're lucky. I've had a number of businesses. I have had that. And I've learned nobody wins, even when you win, type thing. But there are certain things that we can do to protect ourselves so that we can stay focused on the value creation. And I've got an unbelievable entrepreneur expert who has been working with our team for many, many years. He's been kind of a secret that we haven't shared. And we decided, you know what, this is an area that as entrepreneurs, we're not doing enough. And we want to be able to protect our assets from being unjustly taken, litigation, the whole thing. And so I've got an expert, and this expert, Joe Weiss, has got a deep financial background in a number of parts of the industry, including investment banking. So he really knows entrepreneurs well. He saw a need in 2008. Some of you might remember 2008, 2009, major downturn. One of the things we tend to do is cut expenses. He was seeing entrepreneurs make very foolish mistakes in how they protect their assets. And he really dove into the high-end insurance, so that specialists. And this is a property casualty, but this is not your local type expertise. This is at the extreme high end. And I want to share Joe with you because this is who we use in our group for some of the wealthiest people we have the privilege of working with. So you want to stay tuned to make sure you're extremely well thought out in how you deal with these issues. Again, I am John Bowen, where I'm the founder of AES Nation. It's all about accelerating your success. You don't want to miss this.
Ordinary success? No way. You want amazing, remarkable, exceptional breakthroughs. Dig deep, think bold, drive hard, watch yourself soar beyond your dreams. AESNation.com.
I am so excited to have you on today. You have been a resource for our group. My partner, Russ Allen Prince, who doesn't say nice things about almost anybody, raves about all the work you've done with some of the most successful people in the U.S. and the world. So thank you for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So one of the things that really, Joe, what we need to do, I want to set the stage a bit because there's such a need for insurance. I mean, we can do a lot of different things to protect ourselves and so on. We can do great business, but stuff happens, as we say. And I want to dive into some of the lessons you've learned with working with other entrepreneurs. But before, I think it's just really important we get the backstory. So give me a little bit of how did most people don't wake up and say, hey, I want to be one of the top high-end, personal line specialists out there.
Well, as I tell Russ, I'm a reformed financial services guy, so that's where I stand today. But so I started out in the wholesale side of financial services, representing a number of fixed income companies. John Naveed Company out of Chicago, one of the top municipal bond firms back when municipals were really a good play in the market. They only sold A or better. They were the largest in the country. It was a great place for a young man to start out in and get a good solid bound in the financial services world. I then moved on I got my dream shot. I moved on to Solomon Brothers and had a wonderful career there until Mr. Sandy Weil came along and bought us and merged those firms together as a lot of that was going on. And then did consulting work with Prudential Investments Advisory Group out of, which actually is, we've done a lot of work with Russ Prince and his group at that time, launching programs for advisors on improving their practices and the like. And then finally, Strong Capital Management, a Midwestern firm that was actually a great, Dick Strong's a man I admire greatly, Did a terrific job off Wall Street and worked with his organization. So that took me through about a 25-year career. And about 2008, 2009, I started looking at other areas of the business and seeing the advisors that I work with. Primarily, I worked with most corner office advisors with the type of products that I dealt with. And as a result, I could see things that every time I met with their clients, what their concerns were, worries were, whether they were entrepreneur, businessman, physician, whatever the walk of life was. And primarily there was sort of a three-legged stool there in which they worked with their financial advisor, their estate planning attorney, and their CPA. And then when it came to their hard assets, and especially the liabilities out there, no one seemed to have a good person to refer to, or anybody that they felt was sort of on par with the rest of those individuals. So I was looking to change my life, change my career. I was on an airplane most days of my life, and I was a little tired of that, wanted to see my family again. And I started to look seriously at this and made the midlife transition in 2008 over into the property and casualty business. And I had written some articles for Private Wealth on this topic and had interviewed a number of executives at Marsh, and ended up spent some time there. And then about 3 years, because I figured I was making a career change, I needed to work for a big company. And then broke into the organization that I'm currently with, the Bruce Gundelman Company, which we're basically a boutique firm that services the very high end and really matches my skill set probably with the financial advisor community and the entrepreneurs that I work with. So that brings us up to speed right now today. And it's a great career. I love this life, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a chance to do deep dives in knowledge about businesses and seek an understanding. We'll talk about that. But it really is a very satisfying career that's happy. So.
No, it really,
intro, I feel like it's genie being released from the bottle here. So
yeah, no, it's I mean, you're really out there making a difference, Joe. And this is an area where most of us as entrepreneurs, quite honestly, aren't overly excited about seeing you. We should be, and that's what I want to change on this podcast today. Yeah. Because one of the things, litigation, just the exposure of liability today, there is so much in everything that we do, and we need to do it. And the challenge I've always had working with so many, I'll call property casualty specialists, and there's a lot of I'm not going to name companies, but package companies, and many, for most with a home and just not a business, you can just go to the local corner insurance specialist and they've got a product for you. But as you get more successful, you got multiple businesses, you got complexity, you've got toys, you've got things in your high profile in your community, all of a sudden things change. And one of the challenges I find is so many people kind of work with that, they kind of grow with that corner office or corner on the street insurance specialist, and they're selling products. And one of the life lessons I think, I love that you did, when you and I have worked together, we were talking about this, is kind of the Stephen Covey, seek to understand first. And particularly, this is so important of entrepreneurs because we got so much going on, and we just don't know what we don't know.
That's right. And you make a good point. So what happens typically in this country is it grows organically. You tend to, as you're an entrepreneur and you're building your business and your assets increase, you tend to outgrow the services and products that you had as a starter. And so the commodity insurers, the State Farms of the world, all these are great companies, and they serve an average net worth. They sell an off-the-shelf product, and it's good. It suits the need. However, when your net worth starts to increase, you have business assets, you have risk, you have liability risk because of your profile in the community, to name a few other things, then it becomes a more designed program. And that's where you now leave the realm of the Allstate, State Farm, Geico type of model, and you now have graduated up into specialized insurance where you need an advisor who actually is going to look at this, understand it, and build a program in total. If you, let's say, and people don't even realize how they quickly outgrow what they have, especially entrepreneurs maybe that have homes in multiple states. They start out with a little bit of this, that. It tends to grow organic, so people don't look at it. And then next thing you know, you've got this program that's out of control, and not everything is addressed. For example, a quick one, you have a house here, you bought a house in Florida, you have a house up in Montauk somewhere, and you have a liability policy down here, but your house in Montauk isn't named on it. Now you're walking around believing that you have insurance, liability insurance there, an umbrella perhaps, and you really don't, because it was never put together. Insurance is regulated state by state. So what we do basically is we're that answer for those people who have grown to that point. We go in first to understand it and get the program, the bones of it in the due diligence, and then work to put the right solutions together. And we work basically with the top 3 companies, and that's Chubb, Pure, and AIG. And those really have the products designed for these types of individuals, the limits on umbrella policies and the like that they really need. So again, you can't get those, again, back to your State Farms and so forth, great companies, but they can't write, I think they actually have raised their I saw what used to be a high was $3 million on an umbrella policy. They may do, some of them may do 5, but that's unusual. Most of our clients carry 10 and above, and so that wouldn't be appropriate for them.
Well, and I know, that was one of the things that, kind of a rule of thumb is, whatever your net worth is, have the umbrella policy. And, most people, we don't feel that affluent as we're doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it adds up. And, I've always had an underlying policy with a great provider, USAA. But, their cap was at $5 million. And, there's excess available. There's so many different things. And what I love, and this is something you and I share, is this, belief in really understanding the total client. We work with a total client profile with all the advisors. We have the privilege of coaching. They have professional networks. And they're working with individuals like yourself, Joe, because, that you've got to understand the entrepreneur, what they have, what they where they're going, and then really deal with this. But one of the challenges you and I were talking about as we were turning on the camera, this concept that insurance, really smart business people look at insurance as an expense, and I don't know about you, but I don't like expenses along the way type thing.
I've never met anyone who did, so you're not unusual in that. So here's a dilemma from a position for someone who works in this world like me. So everybody watches television. Even wealthy people watch television. Wealthy entrepreneurs, successful people watch it. And the message on television from the Geicos, again, this type of general everyman insurance is that it's a commodity. It's all on price. That's all it is, and it's save $500, save this, and so forth like this. So it's no wonder that the insurance business gets that rap, quite frankly, because it's thought of as just like, well, you call an 800 number, you try to get it as cheap as possible. That's a dangerous thing to do if you're an entrepreneur with substantial assets at risk, and maybe especially if you're high profile. We work with a number of very high profile countries right out of the newspapers who know these names. And believe me, you would not want to have them worried about, saving a nickel here or getting the best price, especially if it means that they don't have the adequate coverages that they need. There's tremendous amount of risk here. So it is. We are constantly bombarded with this message that it's a price thing. You try to just save money on it. I get that, and on a commoditized product, and really at that level, it pretty much is. If you examine auto policies or homeowners policies at that level, they pretty much, you find a few differences here and there, and when you analyze them, but not a lot. They pretty much are general market. They know their markets very well, and they know how to compete, and they do it since there's so many product offers out there. They compete on price. When you get to our world, it's a whole different ball of wax, and it's not that we don't seek to keep costs low. Absolutely we do. Like I said, I've never met anybody who enjoyed overpaying for anything in their life. But the fact of the matter is ours is look at a coverage standpoint first, what you actually need. Then we find it in the market. Oftentimes that's a negotiated process as well. And it's just a whole different deal. So this is to what we were talking about before we got on camera. The average business person, you're looking at this, especially you're an entrepreneur, you're building out your business, you're looking at fixed cost, and insurance is typically a fixed cost. It can grow or change, or it can even go down if there's changes in the business or structure or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that it's a fixed cost, and that's scary to an entrepreneur. I mean, here it is. This is what we have. We have employees. We got all these other fixed costs. Now we have to have this. However, This is a fixed cost that takes a lot of fragility out of your life, whereas there are other fixed costs that don't do that. And this is where it is. So the things that can besiege you as a business owner, and this litigious society that we work in right now, this is very important stuff. So yeah, they don't want to talk to us sometimes because you're just the insurance guy, and I get that. I truly do. I even make a joke about it. But the fact of the matter is that they do need to talk to us. They do need to get it off this commoditized idea that, it's just, well, yeah, give me the basic coverage here. Just let me pay something on that. That's a dangerous methodology to seek help in this.
Yeah, no, and one of the things, Joe, I could tell an awful lot of horror stories where there was exposure that there didn't need to be because, as a financial advisor, we just, and I mean, you have the experience, but I had a family member, very, comfortable, not super wealthy, but comfortable, and they were getting their house painted, and somebody fell off the ladder and died. It was I can't politically correct now how to say, but illegal alien. Didn't know. Their church group decided to pick up a couple of people there to give them jobs, and the litigation and everything else, the insurance companies didn't cover it. It was terrible. My sister-in-law was there, and the whole thing, and so you don't know. And I go on a litany of things, and one of the our business, we're big believers in what we call stress tests, is to take a look at kind of where you are, where you want to go, and what you have, and really look at the stress, economically, politically, and socially, what's going on. And everybody agrees there's a lot more liability there. And I know when I've done it, and I'm a fairly sophisticated guy in all this, I find holes, and I find holes. I didn't find the hole, obviously. I still remember presenting, kind of the stress tests on the insurance side to my wife, and she's kind of going, I'm thinking, wow, this is really good. We're taking care of all this. She was on a not-for-profit that didn't have what we're going to talk about next, D&O, and we had some liability, and we had to address that, and a couple of other little holes. We got a vineyard that there was some exposure we didn't realize. And all of a sudden it's like, wow. And my wife looked at me, why didn't you deal with this? So as fellow entrepreneurs talking to each other, we should deal with this. Our spouses aren't impressed when we tell them that we finally got around to doing it, type thing.
I can speak to that because I sit around the conference table in financial advisors' offices many times, and it's the wife who shoots that look over at you, and then shoots it back to the husband, and exactly to that point, why didn't you take care of this? That's a big one.
Well, and then for our female entrepreneurs too, the husband, I'm pretty sure, is going to look back the same way. It's not gender specific at all. But let's talk about one of the big drop balls is this D&O insurance. And it doesn't need to be. I mean, it's kind of one of the dumbest things to drop the ball on.
Well, this is it. And this is really because, think about this. And I really blame this again from, it's an organic standpoint. You look at the people advising most people financially. So let's say you're an entrepreneur and you're setting up your business, and you're working with your financial advisor, your accountant, there's nobody on that team. Let's say, so the person, let's say you're now a high net worth individual. The people surrounding you and advising you, CPA, JD, the attorney, the Series 765, and all the other designations on financial services and so forth, all those people advising you, there's not one person there schooled unless someone like me is brought in, and that's not to shout my horn, it's just a fact of life. Unless someone who comes in with the understanding and the licensing to look at that aspect, you're going to miss these things. And then they show up when they shouldn't show up when you have the problem. And this is a huge one. So D&O, for example. It's funny because I just looked at a recent study from Chubb, and they said that only about 28% of businesses across the country actually take advantage of D&O. That's ludicrous. 28%. That means that the exposure out there, and what directors and officers does basically, for your listeners, is it's a errors and omissions insurance kind of coverage for directors and officers. This comes to things like making bad decisions, misrepresenting the assets of a firm. It gets very technical, but it's that protection that needs to be out there if you're a director or an officer of a company. And so the entrepreneur who sets up his board, and maybe he's kind of a fast-running, hard-driving guy, and that's why he's successful, and his board members are all they're not corporate types, they're not used to operating within certain structures, let's say, and they're making fast moves. That's oftentimes a problem. Decisions are made, and then there's some liability involved, and they're not covered because nobody ever sat them down and advised. So a major hole in this, and this goes really back to, so when we sit with these folks, our first thing is, like you and I had talked about at the beginning of this, our entire corporate practice here is sort of based on the old Stephen Covey. And I have to admit, I don't remember the 7 habits, and so many people did. But the one I remember, the one that stuck with me as the life lesson, was that seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think that that's really, it's funny, I was listening to a podcast the other day from an intelligence officer who said that, working across the world in the trenches of various things where oftentimes they have assets that are that they're trying to either turn on their own countries and things like that, that the biggest thing was that how they successfully did it in the espionage world was really getting a good understanding of what the driver was and having that person feel that they were understood. So that level of trust goes along so many things. It seems to be a basic human thing. But in this business, it's extremely important for that simple fact that, a little humor in there and all that. But let's face it, we need to really understand the business, what the risks are, point those out, because sometimes you don't even see them. And with social media today, I'll give you a prime example. Sometimes if somebody, for another aspect, which we'll talk about, is employment practices liability, better known as EPLI in our business, and we can develop that a little bit as we go forward. But there's one where, let's say that you're going back and forth on social media with somebody and they complain that they were abused at work, whatever that means. And you sort of do the hashtag Me Too thing, maybe as a commiseration or maybe as a fact, who knows? Well, this can all of a sudden reflect back on the very firm that you work for, cause problems there. There are people actually trolling for that kind of information out there. So the world has changed. It's, the cyber dangers, what we saw in our past elections and so forth, which we really still don't even fully understand the extent of it. These are real for the entrepreneurs as well. So decisions you make, the way you communicate through social media and the like, can put you at risk that didn't even exist 20 years ago. And so all these things are important. So this is how we do it. We talk to them. How do you communicate with clients? What do you say in those communications? What's the actual venue? These are the types of things. This way we can look at, do we need cyber protection for your business? Do you have executives who travel to Colombia or places that the State Department says are risky areas? We do KNR, kidnap and ransom insurance. So there's a number of different things that we just don't think about. Nobody actually trained us for in our businesses, which makes this business so much fun, because normally when I'm brought in to consult with these folks, they've never even heard of some of these things, or they've been exposed to them but didn't realize the actual risks that were presented to them and specifically to their business as a result.
No, it is. One of the big things I'm a believer in, Joe, is that, you create structure first in a business to limit exposure, the liability issues and so on, but there's only so much you can do. Right. And that's where, you want to transfer those risks that would be catastrophes to the business. And that's where insurance is for. And it's a very efficient market, and particularly if you know what you're doing. But one of the things that's become more and more is this, you call it EPLI, the Employee Practices Liability Insurance. And I want to go into that a bit because that's one that a lot of people aren't familiar with. And, as we build scale in businesses, we've got an awful lot of people. We're, hoping we're managed, they're self-managed. We're going to make smart decisions, but, we're human. People make mistakes even in the best companies. And exposure here, what is this?
Well, it's interesting that you ask, because you look at every day in the media, you see examples of this with very high profile people. You see the Papa John thing, and you see all these various things that are happening happening out there. And maybe by the time this airs, who knows, that one's forgotten and we'll be on to 3 or 4 more. That's typically the way it works. So, a lot of it is innocent. I don't think most people are maliciously trying to, exploit employees, or maybe I'm naive in that, but I don't believe that. Sometimes mistakes are made. So the EPLI, and by the way, high net worth people buy this as well for employees they have in their homes. So, for example, if you look at an AIG policy or a Chubb policy for a homeowner's policy for a large home in America, where you have a staff, they actually do EPLI, and that protects you from sexual harassment and the like that's on there. You still can't do anything that's illegal. However, if it's perceived on that, and there's a number of these policies differ in different things like that, but maybe we can provide on the show notes or something afterwards, it's sort of a list of things that are covered on EPLI. But as an entrepreneur putting your firm together, this is something you definitely want. And it's typically, you'll find it in business policies, oftentimes in a BOP, it'll be written in there and so forth, a business owner's policy, a generalized policy. But if you don't specifically specify it or know about it, we always counsel on this, because it's one of those things that, again, here you are, a seasoned guy, very successful that you are, and the acronym EPLI escapes you, and that's typical. I mean, prior to my coming into this business, I did not realize half of the risk that I personally shared. The same thing, and my family, I just didn't know, because no one has really, like I said, the financial advisor community has typically not brought folks like ourselves into that to the fold here. And I've always said, that the typical advisory relationship of the money person, advisor, financial advisor, broker, whatever you want to call him, the CPA and the estate planning attorney, is a 3-legged stool. And it really needs to be a lot stronger structurally. It needs to have that fourth person, which is the insurance person as well, because you've got most of those other 3 are handling the liquid assets specifically, and not the hard assets, the homes, and oftentimes in our world, airplanes, yachts, and that type of thing. But more importantly, the absolute biggest risk, which is liability. The reality of it is, a successful entrepreneur in this country, if you're known, what you want your name splashed out there, you want it on everyone's lips, that's also a liability issue. As soon as if you're involved in a fender bender or automobile accident, I tell my clients here in Palm Beach, as soon as they leave the island in a Rolls Royce and get in an accident, which was a small fender bender, and as soon as their license is presented to the officer, those folks go home, they Google that person, and that injury that would have set you back maybe $1,000 has now become a lifetime injury, and so forth. So, these are the things that, unfortunately, in America, entrepreneurs, wealthy individuals, sports figures, entertainment people, all the like, all are in this position where your wealth and fame, although they give you this great advantage in life, can also be a disadvantage when you're involved in the small altercations that normal people would just pass off.
Yeah, it is, and Googling has become a verb, and I can just see it happening instantly as you go ahead and do this. That you're gonna, somebody's gonna check to see, either the individual that was in the accident or the attorneys, and this is where, one of the things, putting some insulation between you with the insurance, and the excess coverage that we're talking about is relatively inexpensive, and for peace of mind alone, it just makes so much sense. But one of the things, Joe, you've been talking about, and this is something that's really important. We have the privilege of coaching some of the top financial advisors in the world. These are wealth managers, and one of the things we coach them to do is have a professional team. And it's very much like you said, Joe, most advisors who are coming to us, if they have a professional team, because most of them really don't want to give advice beyond investing, because they get paid on the investing side. But those that are really good, and we have the privilege of coaching the top, have at a minimum the accountant and the attorney in their professional network. And it's only, we've been coaching for a number of years now, but having someone like yourself on a team is critical, because, businesses change. I start and close down businesses. I open up a number of things. I've got a lot of different things going on. And if you don't have that ongoing relationship, you're doing yourself a disservice. talk to that, Joe, on this ongoing relationship with individuals like yourself.
Sure. So especially in business, and this is something, again, this is where there should be this consultative relationship involved between the insurance advisor and the entrepreneur or the high-end individual, whichever cast it's going to be, because things change. And let's say, for example, and some of the things we talked about sort of before we got on camera here, you're a fast-moving entrepreneur. You're building out lines of business in many directions. You're looking at various things like that. Consult with us. Oftentimes, there's maybe a higher level of liability, or insurance coverages will be higher in that particular area, or maybe there's some problems that we know about because we have clients already who are involved in such things and have suffered certain things, and we can tell you what to watch out for. So it's one of those things where, make us a partner. If you're drawing up pro formas in your business and you're looking at going forward and you're thinking about this, nobody ever checks, and very few, with the insurance advisor. We have several clients here. We have a big concern here in Fort Lauderdale, just south of me, that run by a very talented woman entrepreneur who is just broke off from a corporate, actually used to run an entity for a large corporation, broke off, bought that entity from the corporation, and has really turned it around and done fantastic things. I will tell you, she doesn't make a move. She'll go through all of her stuff, and then she'll sit there and say, okay, Joe, this is what we're thinking about. What's my liabilities? Are there any other things? And this way we get a quick sign off on it. And a couple of times, I will tell you, it stopped things dead in certain areas that they went to. So, we're not here to quash anybody's dreams or to tell an entrepreneur, don't do this. But we're here to tell you realistically, this is what the current liabilities are. Or like I say, if you're changing your marketing strategy and you're going to, say, a younger age group, a younger demographic, and you're going to do it through social media and the like, you might have some things that you want to watch out for there. We might tell you there's some consultants you want to bring in on that, just to make sure you don't do it the wrong way or perceived differently. So the ongoing relationship is huge, and that's what we do. We always say anybody who's a client of ours is a partner of ours as well. We have a vested interest in their business succeeding, and we want to see that, but it's just good common sense. And there again, so we started this at the outset of talking about the most important thing is understanding the business. Well, that's great at the beginning, at the outset, but if that business has changed, we need an ongoing understanding. And that's where, again, so it goes right back to that basic tenet of understanding the business and continuing to understand it as it changes and morphs. And that's the same with individuals. That's the same with high net worth individuals. As they accumulate more assets, it tends to happen organically. People don't say, okay, we're going to buy a house here. They're somewhere where I talked to one of my clients who was worth $1 billion, and he had bought a farm in Maryland many years ago. And I asked him, I said, were you looking for a farm in Maryland? He said, no. He had flown his jet out to a Sotheby's office in California to look at another home, and the realtor was late. And he was sitting in the waiting room of the realtor, and he saw this one, and he saw the farm in a thing, and they didn't even meet with the realtor. They left, they went to the airport, they flew out to Maryland. So made very fast sometimes, and it just really as quickly and advise you on those changes with the assets and the risks and liabilities you're going to have out there.
Yeah, no, it's so important, and this is critical. Joe, let's talk about how they find you. I'm going to pull up your website and tell us a little bit about the company and you and the services.
Sure. So we're, as I said, we're a boutique firm. We work specifically on two sides. We work on commercial insurance, and we work for high net worth individuals. And it's because it's not that we're snotty or anything, and we don't think. I have lots of friends that call me and say, "I don't think I hit your minimum, but what?" I said, "Yeah, I'll help you." I mean, it's one of those things. But for our niche and the type of advising that we do, we only work with, again, the top companies, both on the commercial side and on the personal line side as well. And that's a small universe. In certain states, for example, commercial insurance. For example, my home state of Florida, and we can do business in any state, and we have advisors in many states, but in my home state of Florida, because of the wind component, because of insurance, I'm sure, or the wind coverage, companies come here and write that insurance for a while, then their actuaries tell them, no more, you're full on wind exposure. I'm sure it's the same in your home state of California with earthquake. Mm-hmm. And we've out there as well. So the markets are very dynamic. Somebody who is great in the business commercial like 2 years ago, if I have a new client and I'm seeking for them, they may not be available anymore because they've stopped writing in the state of Florida. So, it's an ongoing process with this and so forth. So we keep up on top of that. We maintain our relationships with all of our vendors. And again, we constantly are re-educating ourselves with current problems that face both the entrepreneurs and, again, the business owner. So it's, I maintain all my financial designations, as you see on my website. I carry a CPWA, SEMA. That's the same thing that a financial advisor, a corner office financial advisor in this country would have. This way, when I walk in, they know, okay, this guy maybe knows a little bit about my business as well and kind of gets me, and we can then talk at that rather than, and the biggest thing I found, and I'll close it with this, the biggest thing I found when I came over to this side was that most people on this side of the business never talk to folks on the financial side. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there was a fear factor or what there was. I didn't have that, obviously, because I had come from that world, but I don't see many doing it to the extent that we do it, and probably for that reason. And again, they don't have the training. I mean, my training comes in estate planning and all the issues that have to do with wealth management. So I can understand it. I can speak to any of their advisors. If you look at the website, I mean, our key thing is to work with the persons. We want to work with those other professionals, the wealth manager, the accountant, the CPA. We want to make sure everything's congruent all the way across the thing. That's how you.
And it is so important to kind of bring these all together. And I mean, and that's one of the reasons we work well together, Joe. Let me, first of all, thank you. I'm going to go to key takeaways now of I learned here. And this is, this is universal in business. Stephen Covey said it first: seek first to understand, then be understood. But working with professionals, and particularly financial professionals, you want them to understand who you are, what you're doing, because we're specialists, whatever we're in, we know our businesses, but there's so many nuances out there, and it's important. It's also to stop thinking of insurance as an expense. It's really managing it. And this is, particularly most of us are growing businesses to sell down the road. This is going to be part of the valuation. If you can manage your liabilities and transfer that risk where appropriate, it's huge. D&O, director and officer insurance, it's one of the big things. Joe said, I hadn't heard that statistic, 25% only. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. Employee practices. All you got to do is pick up the paper today, whatever day it is, and there'll be something in there about that and that exposure. So, the key is, and this is with all professionals, you want to have a core team of top, you should have, in essence, as entrepreneurs, if you don't have a family office, and usually you got to have 100 million or more to have a family office, you should have a virtual family office. And what do I mean by that? You're going to have these professionals that are going to work with you on an ongoing basis to really make a difference. And what a difference it can make in accelerating your success, not only in the business side, but also on the personal side, so you can take care of the people you love, the causes you care about, and really make a difference in the world. Joe, I want to thank you for the time today, and let's go out. The above me, aesnation.com, you can go for the show notes, the transcriptions, the links, and let's go out and make a difference, and let's get rid of that liability as well. All the best.
Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.
Exceptional, remarkable breakthroughs. aesnation.com